Welcome to W's Repairs. I'm W the Fixing Elf. In this video I'll show you how to replace the front suspension struts on a 2006 Suzuki Wagon R. So let's get this repair started. To replace the strut on the right hand side or the driver's side, you need to remove the air intake and air box. So to start off with, you need to remove the two plastic push pins. They just pop out nice and easily as you see here. And then we need to twist the air intake off the air box and it will come off. Now we just need to do the 4 clips surrounding the air box and just unpop them, and we'll just twist this out the way so it's out the way nice and easily. And you see it's out the way. We'll whip out the air filter now. That's out the way, and now we just one 10mm bolt to remove. So we'll quickly get that out. So here we are, just removing this 10mm bolt. It's not very tight. Just need to whip it off. And then we can lift the air box out. Once that's out, like it is now, drop it as always. Now we can lift the air box out and get access to that bolt as well as the suspension strut. As you can see, there's the suspension strut. Now we're going to do the driver's side, the passenger side should I say. So we need to remove the fuse box first off its little mount. It's got 2 plastic push pins on the back. And yeah, we'll just lift it off and it should pop off nicely. And now we need to remove 2 10mm fasteners holding the bracket in the way. So we'll quickly grab them off in just a second. So here we come with a nice 10mm socket on an extension, and we'll just break these loose. They are quite tight. Yeah, we'll just give them a good little wiggle off and they'll come off nicely. You see, start running off our fingers when you break them loose. And that's the first one out of the way, and then we'll get the second one. And they're off. And now we can get access to this suspension strut on this side, as you can see. I'm just going to give them a quick spray with some WD or some penetrating oil. DP60 is what I'm using. And yeah, we'll move down to the bottom now. I've already sprayed these with oil. So we're going to quickly grab this 10mm fastener that holds the ABS sensor in place. I think it's the ABS sensor, it might be the wheel speed sensor, but it's a sensor that's held onto the wheel. So you just whip it out and that comes off nice and easily. These can break, so be careful. This the bracket can break, but we're going to be replacing it anyway, so it should be fine. And now we'll move the brake clip that holds the brake line in place. The easiest way to find it is with a flathead screwdriver, as you see here, and just give it a push and it'll pop out. And yeah, now we'll move on to removing this. Just get it out of the way, unhook it. And now we're going to remove the 2 bolts holding the suspension strut to the steering knuckle. So these are an E18 and an 18mm. So we just get them on and break them loose with a breaker bar. I did this top one. And we'll quickly whip it off like that. It doesn't take very long. They can be quite stiff and quite tight, but using the combination of 2 ratchets works really nicely. First I used the breaker bar to break this top one loose. The second one I'm going to use the impact gun. My Draper impact is really quite useful for this. So it's definitely a lot quicker way. So I'll pop the E18 on this side on the ratchet, and I'll grab the impact gun with the 18mm from the other side, and we'll just quickly whip it off in just a second. So here comes the impact gun, and you see we buzz off nice and easily, as you can see here. And there we go, that's all done now, and that one's removed. Quickly get my ratchet out of the way, and then we'll get the bolt out. The nut's already off, and here comes the button, the bolt that goes all the way through. Luckily it's not too bad. And whip it off, and then we'll use a screwdriver just to pry the steering knuckle away from the suspension strut. And now that bottom part is loose, we'll move on to the next part, which is getting the 2 top 13mm loose. So let's go back up the top. And you see we've got 2 13mm, as you saw me earlier, soaking with oil. They're not that tight, luckily, so we'll just quickly get the ratchet the right way around, and we'll pop these 2 13mm off, and that'll loosen the strut up. So you can see it's working off nice and easily. The top one you need an extension from is easier. The second one's a bit tighter and a bit harder to get to, but again it's just a 13mm, and we just have to break it loose and it will come off. Yeah, as you can see it's starting to move. I didn't loosen the other one completely, just so it's loose so I can hold it, and we'll remove them properly now. So once that one comes off, we just run it off by hand. This can be a bit tough to run off by hand sometimes. You have a bit of Loctite or something on them, but this one didn't, so that's quite good. And yeah, we'll quickly bust the second one off, and the suspension strut will come nice and loose. And there we are, we're at the end, so I just reached around and grabbed it, so I was holding on to it and supporting it while we undid it. You can see it's a bit tougher when you've got the weight on it, but now it's almost loose. And yeah, now it's coming out. You can see you can't really see much here, so it's my hand moving, but it is coming out. There you go, it's loose now, and we'll whip around the bottom half. You can see the strut's just resting nicely. We'll just pull it out the way and move on to the next step. Before we move any further, I quickly give the knuckle a quick clean up with a wire brush, just to get it ready for the new strut that we're going to fit in a moment. So I tried to find a complete replacement strut, but unfortunately I couldn't find one, so I'm going to have to quickly disassemble this one and rebuild a new strut out of components that I've purchased. I managed to buy most of the components. There's one that I couldn't get, that's why I had to dismantle this strut to get to it. I'm going to start by compressing the spring with these spring compressors. This is a lovely fun job. As you can see, once you get the spring compressed enough, we'll move over to loosening the top mount strut bolt, which is just at the top here. You have to use these special lovely sockets with a gap in them. I did a what's in my toolbox on these. They're pretty handy for this job, and you also need a T40 wrench or bolt that you can put up in the top to hold it to stop the strut mount, the strut itself from spinning. So once we get it in, get it nice and loaded up, get it locked in, and then we can break it loose. It is quite tough, and it is quite a tricky and long process to do this. You just got to bear with it. We keep working it around, and it will eventually start coming loose. You can see this lovely socket combination works, and as you can see, there's the top mount off now. And that gives access to the components we need. This top little bracket at the top here, of the top of the spring, is what we were after. It's quite stuck on there at the moment, but it will come off when we start to decompress the spring that we compress. So I'm going to take these roller bearings off. I've got a replacement roller bearing, I've got a replacement top mount as well. So once we get these off, we'll quickly whip it off, and we'll get the start to decompress the spring, and you'll see the middle mount here fall off. As you can see, just there, this falls off, and now we've got that done. We'll finish decompressing the spring and start recompressing the new spring. Now the new spring is going to be a lot tougher than the old spring, a lot harder to compress, but once we get it down, it'll be nice and compressed, and we can fit it onto the new strut. So here's the strut. We're going to slide the spring on. Remember, the spring is under tension, so be careful. It is very dangerous, and we want to get it into place and secure. And now I'm quickly going to show you how to set up the strut mount. So we need a bit of grease, and here's the new roller bearing, and we just put a little washer that was in the old part in, and it will slide in nicely like this. And then we'll give it a little spin to get it all worked in with the grease, and then we'll fit the top washer on top. Remember, you only want to use a very thin amount of grease, just a little smear over the top, just so everything slides and flows nicely. And yeah, once you do that, that's the bearing reconfigured, apart from a little rubber ring that goes around the outside. That's the roller bearing case, a washer I guess it's called. And then we just pop this is how the top mount goes on top, as you can see, nice and shiny. And now we need to pop it on, so you have to disassemble it to do this. There's a little groove in the top of this mount that goes onto the end of the spring, and then we'll reassemble the washer that I just showed you how to do. So it goes on, and there's the roller bearing going in, and the top mount, and the little rubber bit will go on top. And then we'll get our lovely top mount, and we'll slide that over, and then using a 19mm fastener, spout socket so I say, we'll tighten down the 19mm fastener. You can start this part without the specialist socket, just get it started, and once it's on, just get it down as tight as you can. The cats are making an appearance in the background, and there we go, there's the bolt in place. And then we'll start to tighten up this bolt before we loosen the spring. So again, very similar to how we removed it. Get your T40 Allen wrench in there and your specialist socket, and we'll just keep working it on until it gets nice and tight. As you can see, it's a bit of a technique. The more you do it, the better you get. After a while it'll get tight enough that you can trust it to hold the tension of the spring. So once you've got it tight enough, we can start untensioning the spring. Now this is a very tricky part. You need to make sure the spring stays within the strut mount. There's a couple of areas it needs to stay in. One is at the bottom here, and the other is at the top. Just want to make sure it stays in place. Just hold it by hand. Just keep your hands as far away from any parts that may spring out, because if you pinch your fingers you're going to know about it and you're going to bloody hurt. So I go around from each side, just loosen each side off gently. Don't want to loosen one side too much, otherwise you'll cause a problem. And yeah, as you can see, in a moment the spring will ping into place and you know it's in place. As you can see, once I remove my hand in just a second, the spring will pop. There you see, it pops into place. Now we know it's fully seated. And then it's just a matter of loosening the spring compressors all the way off. And once you get them all the way off, we can finish off the final tightening of the top mount and the strut itself, which we'll go back to in just a second once the camera moves. You can see we're going to go back around there now, and there we are. And then using the same technique, the socket and the Allen, the T40 should I say, and yeah, just tighten it up until it gets nice and tight. As you can see, this is a completely rebuilt strut, and yeah, looks nice. There's the tightened down bolt in the middle. Now we can go back to reinstalling it. So to reinstall it, first thing we need to do is hook the suspension arm back into place, the strut should I say, back into place. So just get it into a nice, relatively good place, being careful not to damage anything. And just rest it nicely there. And we can move back up the top and get one of the 13 mils in, or both 13 mils in, just holding them tight so we can tighten everything up and everything can be roughly in place. As you can see, once you pop it through, I'll just run a bolt down, nut down by hand onto these studs, and we'll move on to the next part, which is tightening the second one up. So as you can see, it dropped down a bit, but that's fine. Just get the bolt on the stud there, and that'll stop it from falling all the way through. And now we can move back down to the bottom and get this strut mounted to the steering knuckle. So as you can see, we just need to line it up. I like to use a screwdriver here just to get the hole roughly lined up. So as you can see, here comes my screwdriver. We'll just pry it into line and get it nicely secured. Get it nice and secure, and then we'll quickly get a bolt in. So we'll just slide the bolt through and that'll make it nice and easy, as you can see. And then we'll move down to the bottom one and get that into place in just a second. So here we are, we can move the camera so you can see it easier. My hand gets in the way then, typical. But give it a little wiggle and the bolt will slide all the way through. With a bit more wiggling, a bit more persistence. That's all the way through now. Now we'll put the 280mm nuts back on the end of this. Remember, it's an 18mm nut on one end and an E18 on the other. So yeah, just run it down, get it hand tight first, and we'll do the bottom one as well. And then we'll use, in a moment, a couple of ratchets to get this nice and tight. As you can see, that's in, it's not quite in. So here comes the E18 on one side on a ratchet, and then we'll use an 18mm on the other side, and we'll just tighten it down. As you can see, the strut will compress around the knuckle and get nice and tight. So once we work it down, as you can see, get both of them nice and tight, and then we'll drop down and we'll do the other half. I'll give you a slightly better angle of this. So there goes the 18 on, and now here's the 18mm, and just tighten them down nicely. It doesn't take too long really to get these nice and tight, and then I'll come back and torque them down to the torque spec after off camera because it's a bit easier to do. Now we're going to put the 10mm ABS or the ABS sensor back in. This just holds the cable so it can't flop around and get damaged. Quite a simple and easy job. Just get your 10mm in and get it nice and tight. If yours has broken off while you do this, just use the cable tie to re-secure it. And now we're going to pop the brake line back in. Just going to hook it back so it just pulls back through. And you push it in and you get your lovely clip. And then we just push that back on. and it will hold it nice and secure. It goes back on so much easier on a new strut than an old strut. So that's pretty good. And just give it a little tap if there is a hammer, remember. So there we are, that's nice and secure in place now. And we'll move back at the top and get these 13mm tightened down. So the first 13mm is the front one. We'll just use your hands to get it started. Just run it down as far as we can, and then we'll get the ratchet on it. A pro tip to these is you want to work once you get one side up, move to the other side, and then we'll go back to the first nut, make sure it's nice and tight afterwards. So that one's done. I'll move back into the tight spot, and we'll just work this one down nice and easily. And yeah, it'll just go down relatively simply, and that'll be nice and secure. Again, I'll run the torque wrench over these in a bit, make sure they're nice and tight. And now we're going to put the bracket back on that holds the engine fuse box on. As you can see, we've got the first bolt in, and here goes the second one. Once that's in, we'll just tighten it down with a 10mm. Get nice and tight. Don't want your fuse box falling off. And yeah, we'll get it down nice and tightly here, as you can see. And now we're going to put the fuse box back on, so it just simply lifts up and clips back on, very similar to how it was removed. And yeah, there we are, that's back on. We'll move back over to the other side now, and put the airbox back in. There's the little peg holder, the rubber that holds the peg. So the peg on the bottom of the airbox, and that little hook bit there that hooks over that other part, that's attached to the other strut. And once you get that nice and in, we'll put the 10mm back in, so there it is, hiding up on the top there. Just start it by hand, and then we'll get the 10mm on the extension and just tighten it down. It can be a bit tight to reach. Once you get it tight enough, you'll get the ratchet on it, and just give it a nice little tighten down. As you see, it'll go on nicely. Move the 10mm, make sure you don't lose it. And now we're going to pop the air filter back into the airbox. So it just slops like that. It does need a new air filter, and I will be changing it in the future. But yeah, we'll just clip these clips up. Nice and easy, really. There's 4 of them, so there's the third one and there's the fourth one. And then we'll put the air intake back on, so that just slots in that hole. Just give it a little wiggle and it goes in nicely. And then we've got 2 plastic push pins to put back in, so the first one will go in now. I'm going to get the camera on it, there we are. And once they're both in, we've successfully replaced the front suspension struts on a 2006 Suzuki Wagon R. If you enjoyed this video, why not drop a like? Any questions or feedback, let me know in the comments. I normally drop 2 videos a week, so if you haven't subbed to the channel yet, you should, and then you'll never miss another video. Do you know anyone else who would enjoy watching this video? Then feel free to share it with them. Thanks for watching until the end. Have a sensational day.